Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. Let's take a look at a video.
I just want to make a statement for all of you here and be very clear.
All right, let's see it.
I was asked a question this morning at the leadership gaggle, and I rejected the premise because the answer is so obvious. For anybody who doesn't know my well-established record on this issue, let me be unequivocally clear. A man is a man, and a woman is a woman, and a man cannot become a woman. That said, I also believe, that's what Scripture teaches, what I just said, but I also believe that we treat everybody with dignity. And so we can do and believe all those things at the same time. And I wanted to make that clear for everybody because there's lots of questions. But that's where I stand. I've stood there my whole life, and those are facts.
So obviously this is related to Speaker Johnson's statement that he will change the rules to prohibit trans women from using women's restrooms in Congress, which is related to Representative Nancy Mace's resolution that she introduced to prohibit the same, which targets Representative Sarah McBride, the newly elected Congresswoman who is the first openly trans woman elected to Congress. Now, there are a bunch of things to say about this, but I will start with the notion that it is a fact that a man is a man and a woman is a woman and a man cannot become a woman. This is not a fact. This is an ideology, because man and woman are gender designations. They are not sexual identities. They are not biological sex. Sex and gender are two different things. Gender is a conceptual category, a social construct that is tied to biological sex in a variety of different ways, but is negotiable, which is the whole reason that you have conservative people talking about what it means to be a real man or a real woman. They recognize that being a man and being a woman is performative. It does not come down to biology. But even if we look at biological sex, male and female are two ends of a spectrum. It is not a binary. There is integration at the center. And you cannot like that as much as you want, but that is a fact. And so the notion that man and woman are these immutable, unchangeable biological characteristics is simply a falsehood. And again, you cannot like that as much as you want, but that is a fact. And as a demonstration of this fact, every year in the United States, there are many intersex children born, and some of them have differences in sexual development, or DSD, which can sometimes result in atypical genitals where they can't tell based on external characteristics, or even sometimes from chromosome testing, if they are a biological male or a biological female. Again, because it's a spectrum and not a dichotomy or a binary. And sometimes doctors will ask parents to choose what kind of genitals they want their children to be surgically given so that they can align with social expectations and the associated genders. And that can be phenomenally harmful when children grow up and realize that they are not comfortable with the biological sex that they have been surgically assigned or with the associated gender. So even when it comes to biological sex, there can be a lack of clarity at the boundaries. And I'm not a biologist, but neither is Speaker Johnson. And the last thing that anti-trans folks want to do is actually figure out what the consensus view of biologists is on this question, because it's not going to help them out. And so the notion that these assertions are just facts is false. These are ideologies. And that brings up the second issue. These ideologies are being falsely presented as facts in order to structure power and values. This has nothing to do with trying to make women's restrooms safe places for women. This is about making women's restrooms unsafe places for trans women, and men's restrooms unsafe places for trans men. Because according to these rules, this man and this man would have to use a women's restroom, or would have to use one of the unisex or private restrooms, while this woman and this woman would have to use a men's restroom or one of the unisex or private restrooms. So this is not about making anything safer for the people who use those restrooms. This is about terrorizing trans men and trans women to try to disincentivize the existence of trans women and trans men, because these people convince themselves that this is a choice and that these people can just decide not to be trans. And that is not only factually incorrect, it is phenomenally harmful. And this brings up the third thing I want to say about this. This has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with Scripture which never once makes any declaration about the immutability of gender or of sex. In fact, Jesus praises people who make themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. In other words, people who castrate themselves, who remove what folks like Mike Johnson believe are the essential characteristics of sex and gender. So the situation is a lot less clear in Scripture than Speaker Johnson would like. But Speaker Johnson is not a competent engager of Scripture. Previously, he said that if you want to know his worldview, just look in the Bible and that's his worldview, which is demonstrably false, because Speaker Johnson does not believe that the God of Israel commanded us to sacrifice our firstborn children. Speaker Johnson does not believe that it is okay to enslave foreigners because they can be our property forever. Speaker Johnson does not believe that Chemosh, the patron deity of Moab, defeated the God of Israel in battle. There is so much in the Bible that Speaker Johnson rejects because his notion of what's in the Bible is actually just an interpretation that serves his own structuring of power and values. So to wrap this all up, this is entirely about identity politics. This is entirely about trying to use an ideology as an identity marker. The more an identity marker becomes constitutive of a given identity and its boundaries, the more people are going to assert and wave around and brandish that identity marker in order to show other members of the in-group that they have more credibility, that they are particularly faithful, particularly committed members of the group so that they can increase their standing. In other words, all these people are doing is hurting already vulnerable groups so that they can advance their own standing within the social identities that are important to them and try to advance the standing of the social identities that are important to them. It's identity politics all the way down, but it is hurting and literally killing people, and it needs to stop, and these people need to grow the hell up. And the fit for this video is Get Low by Maimonides Nuts.